everyone. Welcome, and thank you for coming to the conference or inquiry celebrating reason. My name is Shauna Watson, and I'm Vice President of CFI Canada.
At this session, we will be working through a fairly sticky issue of losing our religion. And we do it with our four panelists for today, Tala, Allison, Muhammad, and Joshua. I'm John, and as a CFIC board member and a chair of the communications committee, I'm privileged to moderate this session. Just to set the background, very consistently across the globe, religion makes an entry into our lives, mostly as a consequence of geography and birth, where we are born and to whom. So informally speaking, we find religion mostly by default and chance. But losing it is an act of sheer will and a natural consequence of expanding our horizons. Having a different opinion from people around you is fairly normal when it comes to food or sports teams, economic theories or political ideologies, and so on. The bonds of society can mostly withstand these agreements without compromising camaraderie or love. But when it comes to religion, believing differently is not so benign. To a former believer, a change of mind is life-altering, and in some extreme cases, life-threatening. Losing religion can be liberating, yes, but it is also a confusing, isolating, and frightening process. And it is this journey that the members of this panel are on. They have all been very close to their religion and then have ended up falling out with it. Over the next hour or so, we hope to explore this process and what it has meant to them and how their stories will and can illuminate our own thoughts on this polarizing subject. The structure for this discussion is fairly simple. First, we'll go around the panel with their individual stories and at what stage of the journey they are on and how they're making it. Then we'll work through some areas of repercussions that they might have felt. And finally, we delve into an aspect of hope for the future in their new worldviews. There will be an opportunity as time permits at the end for the audience to ask questions. So feel free to drop questions into the chat window that I can then direct to the panel. Just a reminder, if you have a question for a specific panelist, make sure you include that in your question. Again, we're working with time constraints, so please excuse me if I cannot get to all the questions, but I will try my best. So let's dive right in. And the first thing I'd like to do is thank my four panelists for sharing of themselves today and for their courage in doing so. While I recognize it is not easy, I can also understand how it becomes compelling, both as an inward and an outward step in the journey, in your respective journeys. I'll turn the speaking space over to Tala. Tala, can you share with us your background and where you are in your journey? And in this, you can comment about the religion you were born into, its influences, and your earliest recollections of how you started doubting it, questioning it, and how you handle those doubts and questions. Tala? If you are muted, it might help to unmute.
Oh, hey, John.
Oh, there you
I'm
go.
sorry, it wouldn't let me unmute for some reason. I needed your permission or something.
Oh, wow. Okay. Hopefully the tech people are handling that. Okay, Tala.
Yeah.
I hope you heard my question.
I did. So to give you a bit of background about my childhood and how I grew up, I'm Arab. I'm Middle Eastern. My parents are Christian. My dad's Catholic and my mom's Orthodox. And we grew up very religious. Being a minority in an Islamic country, a lot of us are that way. And I grew up in a country called Qatar, where there was nothing. That was our life. And I was very religious up until I was around, I would say 24, 25. And one of my dad's friends he had lung cancer, like stage 4 lung cancer. And I would go visit him all the time because I used to work in the same hospital that he was at. And I slowly started to see a lot of hypocrisy from the community. A lot of people who were very devout Catholics, they would come maybe like once every couple of months to see him, while people who didn't even go to church would be there daily, would check up on the family, you know, the kids, like they would ask if anybody needed any help. And I just slowly started to kind of drift away, and I thought, okay, something's wrong. Like I love my religion, but I don't love necessarily the people associated with that religion. So I would kind of do my own reading, and I had all these questions, and nobody really ever answered me. Questions like, there's things in the Bible like, women are supposed to cover their heads in front of men. You're not supposed to speak in a group of men. What else? Oh yeah, if you have like a faith of a mustard seed, you can move mountains. And I had so much faith, and I couldn't do anything. And I kept doubting myself. And then it took a few months, and then I went to the UK to do my grad school. And at that point, I decided I'm going to go ask people in the UK. Maybe they have the answers to my questions. Maybe people in the Middle East just don't know, So I'd ask them, and they would give me the same answers about, modesty and, God's wisdom. And I thought, okay, nobody has the answers to it. And I remember I was in a meeting like for my grad school, and there was this Pakistani guy there, and he said, "Oh, you're Arab. You must not believe in evolution." And I felt like I got punched in the gut. I was like, "No, wait! Like nobody ever taught me about evolution. I don't know if I believe in it or not." And then that kind of started my journey, where I started reading, and I thought, "Oh, okay, this makes sense." But we're too complicated to just have existed. There must have been a God behind it. And then slowly, within months, I slowly started to kind of let go of that idea as well, and just realized that, yeah, I don't think anybody's really in charge here. And then, how I dealt with it. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, please. That's the most interesting part.
Oh, sorry. I was very angry. Religion stopped me from doing a lot in my life. Especially, I don't know about the Catholics out there, the Catholic guilt. I was very naive, and I let people walk all over me, the whole, turn the other cheek thing that we have in Christianity. And I realized that I could have defended myself, and I didn't have to do that. Yeah, we can respect people and love people, but you don't have to have people walk all over you. And I just became really angry, and for a long, long time. And then I kind of started to let go of the anger. And then Donald Trump happened, and then my anger came back. And then now I'm back to just being neutral again. Like, okay. I don't believe, and others believe, and I'm happy where I am.
Fair enough. Yeah.
I
will move on to Joshua. Joshua, if you want to unmute yourself and share with us your story and the same questions, background, how you dealt with the indoctrination, and also your journey towards liberation.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. So I was born to a Christian, a Protestant Christian cross-cultural missionary couple in India. So what I mean by cross-cultural is that India is a lot like Europe, in that every state in India has a different culture. And by that, I also mean a different language, different attire, different cuisine. So India's a bit of an amalgamation of different cultures. So my parents grew up in the south, the southern part of India. So that's the coastal area. So European missionaries could reach there a couple of centuries ago. So the percentage of Christians in the south is a little higher compared to the major part of northern India. So my parents, both of them were cross-cultural missionaries who went from the south to the northern part of India. In the north, they worked among a tribal mountain-dwelling community called the Maltos. So these are people who've been driven out of the plains in some sense. And so most of them dwell in mountains. They have a language called Malto, which doesn't have a script. And so that is the thing. So that's where I grew up the first 5 years of my life. After that, the next 12 years of schooling, I did it in a boarding school in southern India, which was specifically set up for cross-cultural missionaries like my parents. So the next 12 years I spent in that school, where almost every other child was also the child of a cross-cultural missionary. So this was a very Christian school with a very Christian, like we had to memorize large portions of text. Everybody was a believer, something like that. So that was my upbringing. And I was a believer as well. I fully believed what I was taught because the Christian worldview explains almost everything. It tells you why you are put on earth and what happens after you die, why there are people of other faiths. It kind of so that was I was pretty content with that. I wasn't smart enough to question much beyond that. But in college, I came across evolution, which suddenly was a totally different perspective of why I was on Earth. So this is what started me off. So that made the Genesis narration of why we are here questionable. So that is what started me off. And then also being introduced to the scientific method and several discussions with friends. This is what led me to where I am today.
Got it. Thank you, Joshua. That's a different perspective. We'll move on now to Allison. Allison, do you want to share your story? Are you able to unmute yourself? There you go.
Yes,
Awesome. Yeah, same questions.
Sure. I was born in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, also known as the Mormon Church. I come from a really long line of Mormons, back to the pioneers who walked across America to get to Utah with Brigham Young. Like, I come from what they call pioneer stock. So my whole family, my whole extended family, everybody I knew who I was related to was all Mormon. And growing up, I never questioned that. I never thought anything differently. I was fully committed. I fully believed with all my heart, and I enjoyed it for the most part up until the sort of your late teens, where you're like, oh, they're kind of my vibe. I don't really get to do as many fun things as I want to do. But because I believed in it so strongly, I was like, okay, well, you follow these principles, you do these things, you're going to be rewarded for it. And I didn't start to question until I was in university and I was taking a critical theory course, and I learned about this little thing called feminism. And I was like, whoa, this is absolutely rocking my world. And learning about sort of, even outside of feminism, just critical theories about ways to explain how we have structured our world, how we make sense of our world, sort of underlying narratives and underlying ideologies and hegemony and things like that. All of these concepts that I was learning about, I was like, this is, does everybody know about this? Does everybody know? And so because I would see all of these patterns in the world that I was, as I was experiencing the world, you're like, oh, I see this and I see that and I see this. And then inevitably it started to seep into the way that I viewed the church. And I was like, that doesn't quite add up. Or, oh, I'm seeing these techniques about how to enforce ideologies and things like that. And I was like, but how can that be in the church? So I just sort of, it was just these one after another instances that were piling up, that I couldn't ignore anymore, because I had been so affected by learning about these theories and these ways of thinking and ways of processing the world, that I could no longer reconcile what I was seeing at church with what I believed in my heart to be right.
I see what you mean.
And I So this was over a few years. Like when I first learned about critical theory, it took probably a couple of years before I finally decided to leave the church. And I had been going to church and then not going to church, and people call that being inactive. So you're active and then you're inactive. So I'd gone back and forth between that. And it was Easter Sunday, 2014. I remember it, and I will always remember it. I was the ward chorister at the time, so I would lead the music during church. And Easter hymns were my favorite. So I was like, okay, sort of made a promise to God, or made a deal. And I said, okay, I will go and I will lead these hymns with everything I got. And I just need one sign to show me anything, and I will stay. So I get up there and I am leading the hymns with everything I got. And everybody was like, oh my gosh, the music is so good today. And I'm like, yeah, it is, I know. But I was sitting there as the people were giving their talks on Easter Sunday, and I'm waiting for something. And it's Easter, so you would think that they would be talking about like Jesus and the resurrection and the atonement and whatever. But they were completely irrelevant to anything to do with Jesus, really. They were talking about music, and I don't even remember what the other one was, but it was just not what I was hoping for. I had built this up to be like, okay, I'm showing up and I mean it. So God, you better show me. And I just felt nothing.
I see.
And I knew as I was sitting there that day that I was like, yeah, I'm not coming back. This has nothing for me. This is not the church that
you gave God an ultimatum and he failed to respond.
Yeah.
I
I think a lot of people have.
I see.
I think a lot of people have done that.
Yep.
But yeah, it was just, this was no longer the church that I thought it was, about what I thought it was. It was a church about itself. And that was the day that started the whole process where I am now.
Got it. Thank you, Allison. I now move to Muhammad. Muhammad, would you be able to share your background, your story of where you are in this journey away from religion?
Okay, thanks for inviting me. It's my great pleasure to meet everybody else. Last 2.5 hours, I'm enlightened very much about these organizations. My story is not a small story, it's a big story. I belong to a very small country of Southeast Asia. It's called Bangladesh. And let me tell you something else about my country, because most of the persons in here probably hasn't had much idea about Bangladesh. It's a big populated country in a very small area. Now 180 million people live in Bangladesh, and over 92% people is Muslim. And there are other religions as well, but there is no actual census of non-believer, I mean atheists. So Bangladesh was independent from Islamic Pakistan in 1971. Since then, secularism was in its constitutions, but in 1979, secularism was removed from the constitutions, and 1988, an ex-general, he imposed Islam, the religion, as a state religion. So there are a few parts in our countries. Once upon a time, it was under an Islamic state. A couple of years, it was under secularism, and after 1988, it becomes an Islamic country. But there are secular people in here. When it becomes a Islamic country, so secular people automatically get muted. I raised in the 80s. I'm from a very practiced Muslim family. If I tell about my surroundings, my neighbors, my relatives, there is nobody else that do not believe in Islam. So since my childhood, as I can say, age of 9 of my 10, before that I used to took to the mosque with my father. He was 5 times. He always used to do his prayers 5 times in the mosque. So I went with him with the mosque, and I see my mother. She is having her prayer in the houses. So the first question came to my mind: why my mother cannot go to the mosque with my father? So I asked my father that why mom cannot go to the mosque, and he is too busy to answer that because he is just praying. He said women cannot go to the mosque. And a couple of times I asked this to my mother as well. My mother, she has a definite answer. She said that women cannot go to the mosque. So at that age, I can imagine that women and men in our religion is not holding the same position. So later I know about it, why women cannot go to the mosque. And now this time some women can go to mosque, but they cannot pray together. So this is the question I raised to the imam as well, the preachers. And these guys, they really astonished about this kind of question. Because by this time, I know that my religion is like that. You cannot ask too many questions. Just you have to do is to obey. And you have to bow down your head. So, okay, bow down my head to whom? So, everybody says that the God Allah, He lives in the sky. So I look up on the sky. I see it's a big clear sky. There is nobody over there. So I raised these types of questions. So to my teachers, friends, to my families, and once upon a time I can clearly remember about my school. I asked my religious teacher. So I have to mention it. In my school in Bangladesh, religion is a must study subject. You have to study the religion. It has been implemented before 1988, but after 1988, you must have to read 100 marks of syllabus of your religion. Either you are Hindu, you have to read the Hindus, or you Muslim, you have to follow the Islam in your syllabus. So there are two types of education in your country. It's the normal education and other is religious educations. So there are so many madrasas beside my neighborhood. I asked the guys, the peoples who study in the madrasas. I look at the syllabus. There is no science. There is no math. There is no cosmology. There is nothing else. There is no nothing else about science or anything else. Only is Hadith and Quran and all about religious things. So I asked my school teacher why these syllabus are different. He said, you are asking too much questions. I said, sir, if you permit me, I can ask you 1 or 3 more questions. He said, yes, why not? I asked him, we always talk about God, we always talk about Allah. And so far I heard from you that probably he is he. So is he, why he is not she? And I have another question. So far I learned from my knowledge that Islam has fought so many wars. And also it is called a religion of peace. So if it is a religion of peace, why so many wars fought? And the teacher, he gave me a very good answer. He whipped me. He whipped me very vitally. And that day, since that day, I understand that this is the question I cannot ask.
Okay, got it. So how? Just to confirm, how old were you when you started asking these questions, Muhammad? Just quickly.
Probably 9 or 10. I said it previously. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to continue because we're talking here. I'm going to continue with you now. Have you officially left, or are you? If you have, is it a sudden break, or have you slowly drifted away? Do you participate in religious activities, stuff like that?
You see, still my name Muhammad. I cannot change that name. And you see the religion. No one brings the religion by his own. Religion, people have to carry his religion from his birth. So you have no choice to leave it, or you have no choice to accept it. From myself, I was never religious. From myself, I was never believe in religion. And because I know what happened. I know if you go to the cave ages, there were meteor showers, there were falling stars. People thought that God is doing this thing. So every aspect of God is coming from the sky. But so I have gone through so many books since that age, and I came to a conclusion that religion is all about creation of human mind.
Was there one particular moment when you decided that, or was it a long process?
No, it was since my childhood. Since my childhood, I have seen that religion is talking about equality of women and men, equality of the riches and poor. So everything is told in Islam, but practically this is not followed by the rulers or the preachers of the Islam. If you see the wars which have been held in Islam, Prophet has 9 wives, but those 9 wives don't have any 2 husbands. Those wives have been acquired when he owned the wars. So they are the wives of others. So this is not a pretty good story for me to follow.
Got it. And I know there are 2 among the panelists who have who mentioned the feminist angle when they started moving away. So I'll go back to Alison. Alison, have you officially moved away from religion, and if you have, or if not, how did that happen? And are there any remnants of religious activities in your life?
Yeah, like I said, Easter Sunday of 2014 was the last day I went to church as a believing, active member of the church. And as I said, it took a long time. It took years of me going in and out and trying to decide what I wanted to do before I made that decision. And even after I decided, okay, I'm no longer going back, I didn't know whether I was going to what Mormons call get your names removed from the records. So it's one thing to stop going. It's another thing to not be a member at all anymore. And so I was like, well, I mean, I don't know that I need it. We'll just have to see. And at that time, speaking of feminism, there was a group called Ordained Women in the church, and they were advocating for women to be ordained to the priesthood, because in the Mormon church, you're not allowed to hold the priesthood or hold any consequential leadership position if you're not a man. And so I was like, well, I'll see what happens to these women who have been doing this. I'll see how the church treats them, and then I'll decide what I want to do. But then I sort of caught myself and I said, no, I have to make the decision myself. It can't be dependent on what happens to other people or how other people feel. It's got to be what I want. And I had come across an article that had said that one of the people who had organized, sort of facilitated the torture techniques at Guantanamo Bay, that he was actually a Mormon and he was serving in a local leadership position. And that just made me sick to my stomach. I said, I can't have my name on the list where this guy's name is. I don't care what list that is. My name's not going to be on it. So we decided, my husband and I both decided that we were going to get our names removed. And so Easter Sunday I stopped going, but we had moved to the UK for me to go to grad school in September. So we had submitted letters saying we wanted, because you have to write in a letter to the local bishop, the leader of the congregation, and you have to say, okay, I want my name removed from the records of the church, and then you have to give your information. So my husband emailed them and did that, and then a couple weeks later, they sent missionaries to our apartment in England, and nobody in the entire country knew what our address was other than the school that I was attending.
Wow.
And so I'd say hello, and they go, hi, these are the missionaries from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Do you mind if we come in? And I said, must have gone ghost white. And I said, we're not interested, and hung up.
Okay.
And they still didn't take our names off. So we actually had to go through a lawyer who does this kind of thing, a lawyer in Utah who does this pro bono for people who want to have their names removed from the church, because the church wants you to go in to talk to the bishop and AKA get you to not leave. But we didn't do that. So we sent a letter, but they still weren't doing it. So we went through this lawyer who did it.
Okay.
Not long after we did it through this lawyer, the church now says you need to have, if you're not talking to your bishop directly, you need to have a notarized letter. They won't take it through this lawyer. It has to be through a legal notary in order to get your name removed.
So it's like the mafia. You can go in alive, but you can't come out alive.
Yeah, it's absolutely, it's shameful, really, because this lawyer, Mark Nagel, who was running quitmormon.org, where you would just go and you would give in your information, and he would just send mass letters to the church records department, and they would send confirmation letters back. But because they were being absolutely inundated with letters in these last 5, maybe even 10 years, that they are no longer accepting it through anybody but a legal notary, which is, that's pretty suspect if you can't just say, no, thank you, I'm going to take my things and go. They're like, absolutely not. Absolutely not. We will track you down on the other side of the world, and we will come to your house.
Yep, that is scary. Joshua, how was your exit from like I asked the other panelists, was it sudden, over time, and how did that process go through? I'm sure it wasn't easy.
It was certainly over time, because I think one of the things that differentiates people who leave religion from people who pick up religion is that leaving religion takes a certain amount of, not in all cases, but certainly in most cases, it takes a certain amount of thinking. So once I had decided, I remember first telling a friend of mine, a very dear friend of mine, and my circle was relatively small. It was mostly restricted to my boarding school friends and my family. So I told a friend from my boarding school first. After that, I also wanted to tell my parents, just to be honest with them, and to not have that guilt that comes with having a double life in some sense. So my family is relatively religious in that we have a family prayer where we sing song every day. Every day there is a family prayer where you sing songs, read from the Bible, and there's a short sermon, and then there's a prayer. So it was after one of these sessions that I told my parents. And I wasn't prepared for the response that I would receive, because my mother started crying. And the days after that, what happened was my mother started starving herself, as in, and it's very understandable, because for her son was going to spend eternity in hell.
Yep.
And for any mother, that's an extremely difficult thing to even imagine. So she started doing that, and that was not what I expected, certainly. So I had to kind of tone down a bit. So here's the thing. So when I am at home, I still participate in these family prayers, because I know that it makes them happy. And I think it's something to do. I don't know if it's an Indian thing, but I think all of us have a little bit of that in us. We want to make sure the people who love us are happy. It's certainly not easy, but I do that. But the thing is, just to stay sane, I also am pretty vocal about my unbelief.
How about your friends and other
yes, everybody
officials within your religious background?
Yes, everybody knows that I don't believe, and I've been very vocal in discussions about this. And I think I know a few others from my circle as well, who from this exact cross-cultural missionary backgrounds who left their religions for different reasons, not always through the route of evolution, but for some of them have left for other reasons. But so this is the thing. So I've left it in that sense, and I'm eagerly looking forward to the census in Canada where I can list myself as an unreligious.
That's one official avenue for sure.
Yes,
100%.
I'm really looking forward to that.
I will move to Tala. Tala, let us know how your breakaway happened, and are there religious activities that because of from a cultural perspective, you have to participate in? Is it official? Who knows?
Well, because when it happened, I was in a different country for like a year. I just didn't go to church, and I was very vocal about not believing. Well, I was going through the process of not believing, so I was very vocal about that. So when I came back, I just didn't go to church, and because even before, I wouldn't go as much as I did. Like just before I went to the UK, I started to distance myself from the church anyway. So it wasn't a big shock to people, but I wouldn't participate in any of the church activities. And nobody really commented on it, but I did feel a sense of isolation. Like, if I want to be friends with my group of friends, I have to like do all of this stuff, and I didn't want to do it. And I tried to kind of hang out with my friends in another way, like let's go see a movie or let's go for dinner. My immediate, like my sister, brother, they all know. My friends know. Everybody around me knows. I mean, I'm vocal about it. A lot of people are in denial. They think I'm going through a phase. Oh, she's just being silly. She's just angry at God. Eventually, she'll calm down. But yeah, so it is official, I think.
Okay.
That's it.
I think that brings me to the most important and one of the most intriguing part of this whole process of the journey away from religion is, what price do you have to pay when you exit religion? And if some religions or some segments within society make it very difficult for believers to change their minds, or they can change their mind, but they can only go to this extent. And if they can go to this extent, they cannot do this. There are restrictions and there is a price to pay. I'm going to start with Muhammad there. Muhammad, tell us your story. Was there a price to pay?
I'm sorry?
Was there a price to pay for making your statements that you're now asking the questions? Was there any repercussions? Do you have any regrets?
No. Why should I regret? I think.
What was the price that you paid?
I have priced a lot. I have a very big story to tell. Let me tell you in concise. I can remember in one incident, like it's a very big ferry was thrown to the river, and so many people died, like small kids, people. So in social media, everybody, those who are believer, they're writing that probably these people are sinners. So God has taken their life. So sinners have to pay a price like that. I asked them, there are several 6 months or 3 months old kid died. Are there also sinners? What sin they have died? So since it's starting in Facebook, in others area, I become a writer in my later life. I become an active Facebooker, online activist. I become a blogger. So eventually I started writing not in my name. I have to write in other pseudonyms. So because of the situations in my country, if you know about the history of our country from 2013, there was a blogger killing started, atheist killing, called atheist killing by the extremist groups. So I started writing blogs since 2008. And the reason of writing blogs, because from that times, like 2006 or 7, internet become available to our country very much. People from each and every corner of the country uh, get very close access to internet. So I think not me, people's that there are so many people like me, those who want to share their knowledge, their ethics, their studies with among the peoples. So they started to writing in blogs, so that so many peoples around the world and around the country, they came to know about it. So this is the way we started writing about evolutions. And you know what? Evolution is clearly what I said. It's not. It's prohibited in Islam. Islam doesn't agree to the evolutions. But when we started writing about Darwin, about evolutions, about cosmology, so we have to write a lot of things, and we are so many bloggers. We started writing these things, and simultaneously these times also extremist group uh, from our country, from the whole world, Islamic country. So they 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 had a very clear eye on us, and they started killing us. I can ask you one question: have you ever seen or have you ever heard any story that any non-believer or atheist killed uh, any believer? I think never.
But
Not because of atheism, but because of other ideological things, which is, if you consider socialist Russia, communist Russia, sorry, but never for a lack of belief. No.
Yeah, but in our country, the extremist group started the killing bloggers. So some some so we have just started uh, you know what, fearing for our lives. So it started from 2013 to 2016, and between these times, lots of times I was been to abroad, and I was in the kills list. And even when Ovijit was murdered,
Yeah, I read about Avjit.
when he was murdered, I was like 200 meters away from him. I didn't witness the murder, but I heard that something happened, and I just saw the places. It was a bloody mess, and the extremist group, they followed Uvijit from a very long way, and they had killed him. And surprisingly, his wife, she was escaped. About Bonna Hamid, but she lost her finger.
Was this sanctioned by the state, or is it just a terrorist group?
I'm sorry.
Was this state sanctioned? Was the government doing it, or
No. The government must not do it, because the government is in neutral positions.
did they apprehend anybody? Did they arrest anybody?
Yeah, it has been continued. The investigation has been continued for like 7 or 8 years. I think last year there has been a rule from the High Court. There was a justice. They made a justice from the High Court. But Vijit Roy incident was not the first one. It was the starting of killing of bloggers and the free thinkers of Bangladesh. So far, until now, 48 bloggers were being killed, and it's publicly 48 blogger. So when government started to act their positions, they try to grab some extremists, but they didn't do it very properly, because there are so many extremists in our country, where 92-93% people are Muslims, so they can disguise themselves. So extremists, they don't have to flee. The bloggers have to flee away. They have to flee the country. They have to flee for life, and not in open. So many people, I think more than 100 people who have been killed after that, like 2000. 2017 to 2020. Still now, people are killing, but it is not being declared from the extremists. Before 2013 to 2016, it was declared by the extremists in their media, but now this time, these killings are doing very silently. So I was in that position. I was also 2 or 3 times in the targeted. Yeah.
Before I move on to Tala, is your family safe, Muhammad?
I'm sorry?
Before I move to Tala, one final question about this one, about repercussions. Is your family safe?
Yes, I fled from my country at 2019, and my family is there because I was targeted in 2017, I was targeted in 2016, I was targeted in 2019. Every year I was targeted, and 2017 I was nearly escaped. My nephew, he was severely beaten by the extremists, but 2019 I have to finally leave my country because of the situation was being very bad. And after I left my country, my family also being attacked 2 times. My son has been attacked. So we went to the police every time, and there is nothing happened.
Sorry about that. I moved to Tala. Tala, what do you find as repercussions, or what price did you have to pay for your exit?
Thankfully, my story is not as bad as Muhammad's.
I'm sure.
It was mostly you lose that sense of community that you have. So when I moved to Canada 5 years ago, and the first thing I did was look for an atheist community, because we're social creatures. We need to have our like little tribe or whatever you want to call it. And I felt like very alone in my beliefs and isolated. And that was mostly it. Of course, some people, look at you and they think you're crazy, but that's fine.
Joshua, how about you?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. In my case as well, it's very similar to Tala's. So when you're brought up in religion, you are the central purpose of the universe, right? In some sense. So when I left religion, that was certainly something as well, besides the communal thing. But when it comes to community, most of my communities, what I consider communities, my alumni community from the boarding school. And that is a community that I've been very actively involved to this day. I'm a very active part of that. And I've also been discussing atheism, a little bit of science and the scientific method and all of these things. So I know that I'm not as unfortunate as Muhammad is. I know that I haven't been ostracized by that community. So I'm very actively involved with that community. But certainly within your family, when my mother had a stroke, there were relatives saying that it's because of the way you are that it happens. So those kind of things within family occasionally comes up, but I don't take it very seriously because I know that it's coming from a place of ignorance. And I also know that those people, in spite of the fact that they don't understand me, they don't accept the way I am, I know that they still love me. So I separate their actions at these moments from their general behavior at other times.
I understand. And to just within this panel, the difference of reactions is so varied. You have something really visceral happening in some parts of the world, but otherwise, and in other parts, it's almost nothing. Alison, how about you? What kind of price repercussions did you come across?
I'm lucky in a sense that I have 4 siblings, and 3 of them had already left the church or stopped going before I decided to do so. So it wasn't, I didn't sort of bear the brunt of that for my mom. And she had already been through this with other children, so she sort of knew how to navigate that. but I mean, it's been a struggle with my in-laws because we are the only ones on that side who are not members. So that it's tense sometimes. And what Tala was saying, you lose that community, right? We've moved quite a few times since leaving the church. And I mean, that was one of the best parts of being a Mormon, is that you always have a brigade of people who will be there to help you, whether they want to or not. They'll do it because they feel like they're supposed to, or because their moms, like mine, would make them go do it. But you had those resources, you had people to count on. So you pay a lot of social prices. And because growing up in the Mormon church is quite a unique experience in terms of like culturally and theologically, it's kind of hard to relate to other people sometimes because about leaving a religion that's so all encompassing that it's not just, okay, you choose to stop going and then you're done, that it's so interwoven into who I am as a person, who my family is, the way I was raised, that it's not, you don't just wash your hands of it and walk away.
I see. Yeah, without discounting the psychological pain that happens in the isolation when we make these announcements, I still want to go back to Muhammad and Muhammad, because your story is so much more, has so much more of a cost that you have to pay. What would you like to see happen different in society? Where is this headed? Do you see Bangladesh moving towards a positive? Do you see any hope?
I definitely see not only Bangladesh, also if we talk about the Southeast Asian countries, you see our neighbor country India. It's a very big country, but unfortunately it is ruling by religious party. It's called BJP. So religion is a main factor in Southeast Asia. So before I come to the point, I must say about my country. The government is not acting for the free thinkers. Government is not acting for the non-believers, because they have imposed a very controversial law in 2018. It's called Digital Security Act. In 28 of this act, it was clearly written, if any person or group intentionally or knowingly with the aim of hiding religious sentiments or values, or with the intention to provoke, publish or broadcast anything by means of any website or any electronic format which hurts religious sentiment or values, that such activity of that person will be considered is an offense. If any person commits the offense mentioned in subsection 1 second time or repeatedly, he will be punished with imprisonment not exceeding 10 years or fine not exceeding 20 lakhs. It means 40,000 Canadian dollars. So government is imposing the barricade for the free thinkers. It has to be lifted. These laws should be banned. This is not a law for humankind. This is not a law for the free thinkers. This is a religious law. So Bangladesh must withdraw, because if we impose this kind of law, no one can write anything else in the blog. No one can else represent their views. So that is the problem. In my sense, internet is the only way to reach human peoples, more knowledge, more gains, everything else. I gained my knowledge from the library, to reading lots of books. Plato says, if you don't question your government, you are living in a doom's fool. So I have to question. If religion is good, if religion is that much good for humankind, religion has to answer it. Religion don't tell us to kill us. If we see in the Quran, 26 verses, it is clearly said to kill those who do not believe in Islam. 26 verses, it has clearly been said. So humankind, if we have to move to humankind, human civilizations, we have to, those who we are not believer, we must have rights to question the believers. We have to seek our answers from the religion. We need to get that space, and internet is the place. If we can circulate internet, the whole world, in every place, people can gather knowledge. Only in that way, we can get rid of religion.
The way I see it, you first expose people to information and knowledge, and it percolates, and then there is this part, the second step, where people take action, where they move and they mobilize within society, and then finally is the part where that mobilization actually translates into ballots and votes, and how government is influenced through people, the right people being in place to make those policy decisions to change. In that, you mentioned the first part. In the second part, is there mobilization in society that is happening? Do you see people talking more, coming out against these killers? The press, is it picking up on stories?
If I can tell about my country, about 100,000 people, they're literally non-believer. They're raising questions.
So they live in
And
fear.
there are lots of books. There are lots of books as well. I think we are fortunate that not government has imposed bans on some books, but not every books. Not about books about cosmology, about science, about other. So there's a good chance that people can get knowledge from the books, and still people are writing. People are expressing their views. Although these bans have been imposed and there's the fear of imprisonment, but it is very, very good that people are still searching for the truth.
Great. Yep. Fantastic. I will now move to Tala for the final set of discussion points. Do you have advice for somebody who's at a crossroads where they're thinking about, the journey away, and what would you say to them?
I would say that I understand their anger, and it's normal to be angry. And, in time, it might take months, it might take years. You'll come to a place where you'll be glad that it happened, and you'll find your community. And I know it's hard to lose your friends, but if your friends can't accept who you are, then you'll find other friends. That's all my advice.
I can totally see that, and the social, the fear of losing the social connection is indeed a scary thing, and I'm sure we'll address that as we come towards the end of this whole discussion. But before that, Allison, what's your advice for somebody who's standing there, deciding, hey, am I making the right move? Or I have all this knowledge that goes against what I've been raised with. What should I do with it? What's your advice for them?
I think the main question for people in that situation is you have to answer to yourself that it can't be about what your family think or your friends think or your pastor or your bishop or your imam or whatever, or even what we're saying here right now about, oh, you need to just make the hard choice and you just need to grit your teeth and get through it. That it can't be about what other people are telling you, good, bad, indifferent, whatever. That it has to be something that you make, because you are the one who has to live with this. Nobody else is going to have to live with it in the way that you do. So I think the important questions to ask yourself is the way I'm living right now and the way I'm feeling right now, is that sustainable? Can I continue to live like this? If you are able to be like, oh, I like this part of my church and I like this, but I really don't like that, so I'll just ignore that part and I'll do what makes me happy and what I find fulfilling. Is that going to be sustainable for you or not? It might be. You might be able to find a balance that works for you, but you might not. So rather than trying to look at the choice and being like, oh man, this is such a big choice, I don't know that I can make that choice, and then just be staring at that and have that sort of immensity of that decision weighing on you, is that going to be sustainable? It's a checks and balance, sort of cause and effect, how much it's going to cost you versus what you're going to get, and how you want to live your life. So do I make this choice now so that in the long term I can have this kind of life that I want, or do I make this choice so that in the long term I can have this? But those are all questions that at the end of the day we all have to answer to ourselves and to nobody else. But if you are struggling with making those kind of choices, especially if you come from a Mormon or a Mormon adjacent background, feel free to message me. I can put you in touch with a lot of people in similar boats.
Thank you, Allison. And that brings me to the point where to make those decisions, how do you arm yourself with the knowledge? And that goes back to what Muhammad was saying: is the internet point is, the more you learn, the easier it might to make a choice either way. The more you learn. So Joshua, what's your advice?
Yeah, I think I resonate very much with what Allison said. In addition to that, I'd also say that most of us who kind of who try to think about things in a slightly different way from religious people, there's only so long that you can stay silent. So no matter how much you want to remain peaceful, at some point it's going to blow up, and that can lead you to make decisions like immigrating to a different country in some sense. So it can have different ways of exhibiting itself, this wantingness to break through. Apart from that, I think it's not always about leaving religion. What we need in society more and more is able to think in a certain way. So you can believe in the supernatural as a private matter, as a personal matter, but as long as you don't try to influence the public in any way, I think it's fine. So what we need more in the society itself is kind of the scientific method has to be taught, I feel, more and more, especially at a younger level. We learn it along with physics and chemistry at times in schools or sometimes in colleges. But if these subjects can be taught as a separate subject itself in schools, I think it would make a lot of difference to society. And leaving religion is mostly a byproduct of these exposures. And I think it would eventually happen if academics really put their head together to influence the school system, so that these subjects, along with philosophy and the scientific method, are taught in schools from the age of let's say 9, 10, or 11, right through high school. If that happens, I think living religion would become a cakewalk in any society.
Makes sense. And we alluded to the final part of this panel discussion earlier, which is the social aspect of the fear of losing the social aspect. When we are involved in religion, our time and our preoccupation takes away a lot of our time. Now that it's gone, what replaces it? Like, non-belief it's not an actual position. What replaces, what worldview would you now take that now informs your opinion about things that happen around you? I will start with Muhammad.
Basically, from myself, I think human being is very kind, very precious. Human being is very precious. So far, we know, at least from today, that human being is not available to other, in our whole universe. There is no other planet holds human being. So human being is very unique and very precious. So every human being religion is not an special. Human being is ready. Humankind, we have to do humankind. We have to gain knowledge. We have to know about our, physics. We have to know about how we can increase our lifetime. How we can get rid of viruses. So this is the work human should do. Human should do gain knowledge, and human being should do work to gain knowledge for their better life, for their prosperous life. What is happening last 2 years? The world is affected by the coronavirus. So human being went to mosque, human being went to churches, or they went to human being. They went to other human being, because human being is allowing other human being to live in this world, because vaccine is not created by the religion. Vaccine is created by other human beings. So we have to keep gaining knowledge day and day by day, because wasting time in kind of religion, in kind of the heaven is a peculiar thing to me, because if you we all see the above sky, that the God is living in the sky, but we never see beneath our leg. Sky is also beneath our leg is as well. So sky is all over there. So we are living in a hanging. We are in a hanging positions. We are human beings, and we have very limited time to deal. So this limited time had to be spent on for humankind. That's it. That's what I can say.
Very poetic, and I'm hoping that as part of your post-religion, you will continue to write your blog and spread the message. I'm going to ask Joshua. Joshua, what's your identity past religion?
A friend of mine jokes about it. He says, although you've left religion, you still have the missionary gene. So,
so you are evangelical about it.
Yes. So I have been quite vocal about my non-belief in my own circles. So I think there is some truth to that. And apart from that, it's like how Muhammad said, the internet has been a huge liberator. Listening to interviews by Dawkins, Hitchens, the Four Horsemen, and the others, it's been so informative. It's helped me shape my thoughts on so many aspects. And I think so one of the first things that I did when I moved to Canada, and I'm a very recent member. I moved here right in the middle of the pandemic. One of the first things I did was to become part of CFIC, and I'm very happy to be associated with CFIC. I think organizations like these have a lot of potential to shape societies, hopefully advance them. So I think it need not be the case for everybody, but I was driven probably because of the missionary gene. So that's my story.
Sounds good. Allison, what's your take? What's your new identity? From Clark Kent to Superman.
I think one thing that I find really liberating is that I don't have to have one single way of identifying myself, that I can have I contain multitudes, I can have multiple labels, I can change those labels with how I progress as a person and new information. I get to change how I think, I get to change my perspectives and things like that, so that I don't have to be nailed down to one term or one way of being, one way of inhabiting that term. I definitely do. I do say that I'm an atheist. I am a ardent feminist, I'm a leftist, I am progressive.
Sorry, I didn't mean to ask the question in terms of labels, but in terms of how do you fill your time now?
Right. Well, yeah, but that's what I mean, is that I can learn about all of these things that I didn't know before, and that I can learn these ideas and decide what resonates with me and what doesn't, and be able to adopt lots of different parts of my identity, so that I don't have to just be narrowed down. I got involved with CFIC 2018, I think, and it has been good for me to be able to talk to people, even though I haven't met any other ex-Mormons through CFIC, but to be able to talk to people who have had similar experiences, or who are interested in my unique perspective, so that even though you can leave such a all-encompassing religion that affects every aspect of your life and your social life especially, but that you will find other people. We have the internet, which is an incredible resource, good, bad, or otherwise, but that you have access to these communities of people, and that you can find all different kinds of groups of people to learn from, to commune with, and all different kinds of things that whatever you've been missing, you can find it. It's just going to take some digging.
Gotcha. Thank you, Allison. Tala, how do you fill your time now? Or yeah, what forms your worldviews and opinions, and how you look at the world now?
I think it's science. I trust the science, and trusting science doesn't mean having blind faith in science. I do understand there's a scientific process, and some studies need to be peer reviewed for somebody to really believe in them. That's how I see it. And if there's anything that I see that doesn't seem real, or even if I see it with my own eyes, I still question it, because there are some people who are really good at magic. I mean, magic as in the sleight of hand. So yeah, I question everything, and I don't believe what's on social media. I talk to experts. I mean, thankfully I work in science, so I have access to a lot of scientists, and I can talk to them, and they can tell me about their research, and that's how I kind of build my
new worldview.
Point of view. Yeah, my worldview. Yeah.
Thank you. I think that brings us to the time, 3:45. We will quickly, I guess, look at questions. I have a few that I have picked up, and I'm hoping that tech support will help me with the remainder. I have a question here from the audience for Allison. Did polygamy influence your decision to reject Mormonism?
That's an interesting question. I remember I think I was about 15 or 16 when I learned that Mormons, they don't practice polygamy in this life, but it's what's called spiritual polygamy. So a man can be sealed, so married in the temple can be sealed to more than one woman, but a woman can't be sealed to more than one man. And I remember learning about that when I was 15, and I was pretty upset, because I felt that I'd been lied to. And I remember being in the van, and it was just my parents and I in our van, and I said, "Oh, so they lied. We still do practice polygamy, but they lied." And and I'm in the back and my parents are in the front, and I just look at them and I can see them going like this. And we never talked about it from then on. But in terms of polygamy, I was never much of a historian. I didn't really do a lot of church history research. I wasn't really interested in that. I mean, I know that it exists and some people really like it, but I was more so into scriptures and doctrine and things like that. So it wasn't really a huge issue for me. But I do remember when I was getting closer to the end of when I decided to leave, I was like, what would I do if the prophet at the time, who was Thomas Monson. I said, what would I do if President Monson said, okay, we're all living polygamy now. Polygamy's back. What would I do? Would I be okay with that? And obviously my answer was no. But I would just do, so because it was so long ago, it didn't really feel like it affected me as much. But I would do those sort of thought experiments to try to make my my thinking and my reasoning a bit more consistent. So it wasn't a huge thing for me personally, but I know a lot of people have had a lot of struggles with it. There's actually a podcast called Year of Polygamy by Lindsay Hansen Park. She's actually a friend of mine. And she's a quite prominent figure in terms of like progressive Mormonism and ex-Mormonism and sort of broadening that Mormonism tent. So that's really something you could look into if you're interested in learning more about polygamy.
I have a question for Muhammad. Why do you think the most recent killings of bloggers aren't as publicized? Have the tides changed in Bangladesh?
Very good questions. If we look at the 2013 to 2016, you know what? If you've seen, I forget the names. When IS made a killing, they have an official website or something like that. They have an official declarations. So the main extremist group in Bangladesh is a follower of ISIS, and they followed their path. Their primary target was to kill people and have media reaction. So to tell others people, don't write against religion, don't write against Islam. These was their primary targets from 2013 to 2016. So after 2016, there are two impacts. Government started to act, but slowly, but they started to act. They started to grasp some extremists. And other things is they have changed their ethics. They have changed their propaganda. So they are now public now known them that there is a group is called Ansarullah Bangla Team. They are existing in Bangladesh. And if you talk about against atheism, against religion, in favor of atheism, so you'll be killed. And you'll be killed in Islamic way, not by pistol or not by something else. You'll be killed by slashing your throat or machete or something like that. So now this time they are underground and they're killing it underground for two reasons. Because to save their trace, to save their skins from the government, and they're just doing their works. If you follow in 1400 years back, so there was a disappearance. There's a disappearance is followed in the early stage of Muhammad. So disappearance is now happening in Bangladesh. So disappearance by the government and disappearance by the extremist group is now their things. So people get they are disappeared, and nobody else find the remains. So now these things happen. Sometimes remains are being found, but nobody claims about who did it. So they have changed their strategies for their practice to save from the government authority, and they have done their work. So they will do it. They didn't stop it yet. If I have the news in my hand, like 3 days ago, also 3 people were being arrested. Also 3 people involving in extremist group, they are being arrested. So they are doing their works. They are now in public, but they are mixing with the public. But they didn't stop their works. They have just changed their tactics.
Yep. In all this, how's the press? Do they report, and if they report, is there a backlash like we see with other parts of the world where journalists are attacked and killed for reporting, or not for reporting, or even for recreating certain news items?
Unfortunately, in our country, the journalists, they have stopped acting. They have stopped acting. I don't know why. Because of the laws from the government. Because if a journalist writes about a extremist that he has done these things, or if they publish these things, so it against the current digital security law. Government don't want any chaos. They want to be in the safe positions. They are telling the extremist not to kill. They are telling the non-believer not to write. That's it. So if you write anything that government don't like, you have to be in the prison. I can give you an example. I think I have sent you some photos. There was a journalist. His name was Kajol, and he wrote something about in the news media, and suddenly he was disappeared. He was disappeared. No one knows who disappeared him. Is the government or the extremist group? So after a few months, he was found, and then he was kept in the custody by the government for 273 days. Another freethinker, his name is Mushtaq Ahmed. He claimed a banner in front of his chest. He wrote down, "Where is Kajol?" And then the next day, the Mushtaq Ahmed was imprisoned, and Mushtaq Ahmed died few days ago in government custody. So these are the facts. These are the real scenario is going in Bangladesh. So you cannot write, you cannot express. If you write anything on social media, you get arrested. You get disappeared. Nobody knows who did it. Is the government do it or the extremists do it? Or you cannot ask any questions because of the law, Digital Security Act. Nobody in this country can raise a question about what government is doing. So we are in a very, very typical situations for the free thinkers in Bangladesh. Still now, nobody cannot express his beliefs still now. If you cannot raise any questions, you cannot raise any views against government or religion or something else. So you will be kept, you will be disappeared, you will be killed. I don't know what happened, because journalists are feared to write or say like this way. Journalists are also being tortured. That is the real scenario. People don't know it because it's a very small country. You are living in Canada, we are living in Canada. People don't know it. But in Southeast Asia, this is happening. And India, now the Modi government is following this strategy.
Yep. And that's the sad aspect of any totalitarian regimes or a pseudo totalitarian regime where the press gets annexed and they no longer participate in the democratic process, and that is a scary prospect for everybody, every democracy right now. I think we've come to the towards the end. I'm just checking if there's any other questions that I haven't addressed, unless there's a huge list. I can't look through everything, but I don't have anything that's directed at any of the panelists now. So let's wind up. I'll just give them maybe 10 seconds for any questions. Okay, so again, guys, thank you so much, Alison, Tala, Muhammad, Joshua, for taking the time to share your stories. Your presence on this forum reflects our common quest, actually, as inquiring minds, to not settle on answers given to us to be taken on faith or fear, but they need to be searched, sought out, and vetted through a rational, compassionate lens. Somewhere, someone out there is on a similar journey, and they will also realize that they're not alone, and hopefully find strength to continue that quest, just like you did. Best wishes to everyone. Thank you, the audience and participants for taking the time to attend and your awesome questions. Hope you enjoy the rest of the CFIC Conference for Inquiry for the remainder of the day. Bye now.